Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AEye Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AEye Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AEye Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to AEye Scouted. I am not Dave because he's pretending to be busy. Or he's broke his laptop, which I think was fair after the Leeds game. But I am joined by Karl. How are you doing, Karl?
Rubbish.
Yes.
How are you?
No one else was dreadful.
Good.
Yes. You weren't on Raw, Karl, so you have to talk about the Leeds game for a bit. We all know it was dreadful, so we don't need to do that whole shtick, but did you think it'd get worse, considering how the season's been? Because that Leeds game was top of the crap pile that was this season for me.
Did I think it would get worse? I thought there was a fair chance it could stay the same and
yeah,
be fairly inconsistent, but I think, back-to-back results and defeats against Forest and Leeds, and both being in the relegation zone ahead of the matches. Obviously, it's something. I don't really want to put too many labels on it, to be perfectly honest, because, like you said, we all know what it is and how bad it is. I thought it was the wrong tactical setup. I thought going with the diamond so open as it is was just asking for trouble against Leeds, to be honest. It was already going to be a basketball game, backwards and forwards, just because of how they play and how we kind of have to play at the minute. And it was not any better, with a big gaping hole in the middle of the pitch again. Not helped too much by our own individual errors, obviously, but there's a big problem to solve in midfield at the minute, off the ball, and I don't really think that we're very close to doing so.
Yeah, it's just really odd. I think Fabinho's probably the player who's come out with the most scrutiny after the last couple of games. Gomez obviously up there as well with the very stupid blind passing. But for us to have even before the nightmare of this season, our season was very dependent on Fabinho, because he's obviously our only real number 6. I know Henderson can play there, but obviously he's been performing dreadfully as an individual as well. But you mentioned the system there, but when a player is struggling that much, why do we then let him cover about 1 million yards of open space?
Well, that'd be a good question, even if he was in good form, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm really surprised that we haven't just stuck with the 4-4-2. It's not perfect, and we're not playing perfectly anyway, but the diamond as we are at the minute, with the side midfielders not really being suited to it, with the deep midfielder obviously being in the state that he is at the minute, I know there's not too much scope to rotate because of injuries and absences and that. I don't know. I don't think we have to go into too much about the tactical side of it at the minute, just because there are so many individuals underperforming as well, to be honest with you. Even not playing well, we still should have won that game. We still should have had 3 of the chances that we did have should have ended up in the net. And if that happens, then you put off the problems and the discussion of the problems for another day, at the very least, even if you don't actually solve them in that moment. But at least it keeps you in touch with the objectives that we do have left for the season and everything else. But not having that mental resilience anymore is a really, really big problem for us. Not having that certainty, the guarantee at the back, the near, I wouldn't say completely faultless, because I don't think we were ever completely faultless just because of the high-risk way we approach games, but we always had like that very, very assured sense of self. Even if we did concede chances, we would create more at the other end, or even if we did concede the chances, we have the individuals to stop them going in anyway. And we don't really have any of that at the moment. It's a big worry at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically Alisson in a big game of heads and volleys at the minute, so it's not really pretty. Anything else to take away from the Leeds game apart from just the overall shitness? Because I think everyone thought the Forest game was the real low, but to perform like that against Leeds, who I think we're in a worse vein of form than what Forest were at Anfield. We've lost Van Dijk's record, we've lost our home record, and it's not like we dominated a game against Leeds. It was quite, I'm pretty sure it's quite even in possession, and both teams had chances, but like we weren't even treating them like the relegation team. It just felt like an even game at times. That's shocking.
Yeah, I mean, we had more possession overall, but it was much closer in terms of decent things that we did with the ball compared to them, wasn't it? It was it was not controlled, that's for sure. Having more possession is not really the element of the game. It's where you have the possession. It's the areas that you're dictating where the game is being played in, and we didn't do that at all. We didn't really have control of the game. We didn't stop them playing in areas which hurt us. We didn't keep them under pressure for any real sustained periods, I didn't think. I know there were a lot of shots towards the end of the game and the rest of it, but it wasn't like that they were desperately defending with 9 men inside the box for 10 minutes at a time or anything like that. It was just a very wild, open game. If this had been like a performance 3 months after Klopp took over the team, I wouldn't have been surprised. But now, at this stage, obviously, it's not what we're accustomed to now. We're usually so dominant in the area of the pitch that we do play in. Even if we're not at our best or playing really, really quickly, we still seem to control the spaces on the pitch where we want the game to operate in. But this season, that's gone. That's just so far out the window, it's unreal. What else do we take from that? I hope that what we do take from it is the massive kick up the arse that it should have been already, but now that it's happened at Anfield, it has to be. Because, I mean, we've spoken before about Liverpool's European form, a European approach, let's say, rather than form, being maybe more suited to playing the deeper 4-4-2 and a bit more counter-attack and all the rest of it. And maybe this season, going the distance in Europe is our best route back into the Champions League. Well, at this rate, probably finishing third in the group would have been better and trying to go the distance in the Europa League, because we're not playing anywhere near good enough to beat teams over 2 legs, let alone a number of them and the best sides in Europe, obviously. So at this moment in time, I think it's more of the same of what we've been saying for the last few weeks. We've got to get through this period somehow, getting enough points just to stay in touch and sort things out between the December break, January transfer window, and before Europe starts up again, because the league is an absolute abomination at the minute.
Are you on board with Operation Finish 8th then?
I really don't want the Europa Conference League, that's for sure. And I don't like the Europa League anyway, so if it's not going to be Champions League, I don't see the benefit of the other European competitions, to be honest. Absolutely.
None of that shite for me, because I will be doing the Raws for them, and I won't be doing the Raws for them, so you can all get in the bin. So we'll get on to the dreaded Napoli game, because who wants to sit around talking about Leeds? We can go top of the group, Karl. Do you fancy a 4-0 win here?
Kind of, but that depends on who you're asking me is going to win the 4-0. Look, a lot of this is going to depend, obviously, on how much both teams rotate. Napoli's form is just ridiculous at the minute. Really, really good run of victories. Really, really strong again at the weekend. Those two in attack again. Just like unplayable at the minute, to be perfectly honest with you. Kvaratskhelia was outrageous again. Set up Osimhen for 2 goals, scored one himself. Osimhen then got a hat-trick, 4-0 against Sassuolo. And it was just, a very, very dominant, very fast-paced, very offensive-minded, electric performance. Basically, pick out any football-describing words which are positive you like, and they are Napoli and they are not Liverpool at this moment in time. So you'd imagine, obviously, given the fact that that we're both through, there is going to be an amount of rotation. They face Atalanta at the weekend, which is obviously a big game in the context of Serie A. All of them are at the minute, but Atalanta are second, Napoli are top, so it's huge for them. So I would imagine they'll rotate as much as they possibly can, while still remaining either reasonably competitive or keeping maybe 1 or 2 people fresh who have been in and out of the side, that sort of thing. Liverpool's, I'm not really sure. I mean, we've seen Klopp before go into these games where everyone wants everybody rested, and he plays like 3 or 4 really big players. I think it was Jota a couple of years ago got injured in the Midtjylland game, which was basically a dead rubber. And we obviously have fewer options at this moment in time to rotate as well. So it's either going to be much the same as it was, especially in attack and that sort of thing, or else we're going to be bringing in proper kids and proper backups. I mean, you could probably pick out a handful of players, and we'll go through the squad in a bit and see who we think will be in the lineup. But I imagine this is going to be a bit stronger than some people would like.
Probably has to be, which is the sad thing. We'll start with Napoli. I mean, I'll look at the Rangers team because that might be more accurate in terms of a rotated team. But then I think they played Sassuolo, so we'll go through that team as well. Alex Murray in goal, De Lorenzo, if I can't speak. Ostergaard, Kim, Rui, Ndombele, Lobotka, Elmas, Politano, Giovanni Simeone, and Raspadori. That was the rotated Rangers team, but they did beat Sassuolo at the weekend 4-0, which was Murray, De Lorenzo, Juan, Kim, Rui, Anguissa, Lobotka, Zielinski, Lozano, Osimhen, and Kvaratskhelia. I'm taking that as a win with that pronunciation. Yeah, so obviously the Sassuolo game is, to my knowledge, as close as first team as can be. Maybe Raspadori for one of the other for Lozano. I can't speak today, Karl. Is it going to be somewhere in the middle? Because obviously Rangers, regardless how bad we are, even we beat Rangers, so it's a bit of a tougher test. But are we going to see the Osimhen who only just came back from injury? Are we going to see Kvaradona batter us again, or are we going to see the Ndombeles and Ostergaards of this world? What do you reckon?
I do think that they will change quite a few around because, like I say, obviously that big game against Atalanta is going to be the priority here. I mean, the chances of us winning 4-0, even if it's a really rotated side for them and us, our biggest strength is probably pretty low anyway, to be honest. So you would imagine they'll get away with playing a few, let's say, Champions League regulars just to have that sort of continuity and spine, maybe. But then bringing in, like, for example, Raspadori, Simeone, I think both of them start again. Probably Politano again, so it could be like the entire front three is not starting, and then maybe they bring on one or two. We've seen quite a lot of managers like to just keep that little bit of rhythm and involvement and maybe give them 25 minutes instead of 60, 70. So I do think that there'll be changes. There's no reason for them to risk it, basically. It's very, very unlikely that anything untoward happens in terms of them losing out in top spot, whether they even think that that'll make that much difference anyway, given some of the teams who are top and finishing second at the moment. It's pretty much up for debate, I think. The one, maybe a couple of areas of the pitch that maybe it's sort of worth looking at and seeing that they might make changes. Obviously, Rahmani is out injured at the minute, who would usually be first choice centre-back with Kim Min-jae. So Ostergaard's coming in, or Jesus, depending on which one they want to play against Atalanta, maybe for a bit more rhythm and minutes for them. So instead of obviously resting the player who is going to be playing there, they actually want that partnership to be getting a little bit more continuity and understanding, because obviously Kim Min-jae is a new signing anyway. So Ostergaard and him perhaps, but then if they want Jesus for a bit more experience and know-how, then probably him.
Yeah, it might be an interest. So, I mean, if you look at the midfield, I mean, Lobotka, Anguissa, Zielinski is basically... It's almost like a Liverpoolish midfield. Obviously, Anguissa's... He was just always impressive for me at Fulham. And I know he had weird spells under Parker where I think he basically wanted to go and he was dropped a little while, but... It's just odd to me. Like, I know Napoli's a big team and stuff like that, but I'm surprised nobody in the Premier League just fancied a go. Because all the materials were there, and I think now he's getting talked about as one of the better midfielders in Europe. Zielinski we were obviously linked with for so long, and Lobotka I don't know too much about, but he looked very good against us. But yeah, that midfield, and Ndombele, nobody knows. Nobody knows what you get on the day, but he can either be the best midfielder in the world or the corpse of Fabinho at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, look, how we are at the minute in midfield, Ndombele could be like man of the match and score 6 against us, to be perfectly honest, because all the
Yeah.
strengths that he does have, obviously ball carrying, progression through the lines, and just boshing people out the way while he's running 50 yards and all the rest of it, we can't cope with that. We're rubbish with that at the minute. So you can certainly see that there's a reason to start him from a tactical perspective, even if they didn't want to rotate heavily anyway. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him in. Lobotka's the one they've tended to keep in place, certainly from the start of the games. He's really, really important for their ball progression and playing out from the back, everything else. I think he's such a good defender. Really, really good defensive midfielder. Elmas would probably play it, you would imagine, again, just for a bit of freshness and keeping people back for the Atalanta game. So it's a nice position for Spalletti to be in, to be honest, because he just doesn't really have any kind of pressure on him at all. He can rotate, and if they lose, no big deal. He can probably afford to leave out 3 or 4 players and bring them on because of the increased number of substitutes, keep everybody ready for the weekend. The only thing I haven't actually looked at, I might just do that quickly while we talk about the next piece of the build-up, is if any of their players are 1 yellow card away from a suspension in the knockout games, because obviously that would impact on whether they play or not, you would imagine.
Mm-hmm. No, that's quite interesting. I'll ask you about Spalletti in a second as you Google that in the background, but it's weird with Napoli, because I think I still kind of look at them as the Sarri team, and it is interesting that their best season in a little while has came with the outing of Koulibaly. Alan left, obviously. Jorginho left, obviously, a few years ago now, both of them. Mertens, Insigne, etc. So it is an interesting development. I mean, Kim looks like a fantastic player. I had no idea about him until he moved to Napoli, obviously. Murray, I remember him being highly spoken of when he was breaking through as a goalkeeper. But it just looks like they've maybe finally got the squad to compete on multiple competitions in terms of that, because it always seemed to be there was an 11 and then it was kind of meh behind that. But it just looks like a really fun team. I'm not going to lie, I don't watch much of Serie A, but if there was a team I'd probably watch, it would be either Atalanta or Napoli. So it's nice to know I can watch them at the weekend unless they're on at the same time as us.
If they are, you still might want to watch that game too.
Well, that's true,
yeah. Look, I think we said before on last time that we were getting ready to play them. To be honest, this is such a massive opportunity for them in Serie A because of the lack of consistency some of the other sides have, the lack of ability that some of the other sides have, to be honest. Obviously, AC Milan from last year are the ones that they'll really be competing against. Atalanta actually had a fairly slow start this year and have just come back really, really well up until 2 weeks ago when they lost to Lazio. So I think that this is such an extraordinary opportunity for Napoli, and you can imagine that if come February or something like that, they are still 2-3 points clear, maybe even a little bit more. At the minute it's 5, but it might not be that for the entirety of the next 3 months or whatever. They probably are going to focus on that because it's been obviously a long time without real sustained domestic success. They probably see a massive opportunity, not just for this season, but to establish themselves now. It's like Juventus obviously have not come back. They appointed Pirlo, it didn't go well. Allegri has come back, that's not going well. They must be like at least another managerial change and 2 years before they can really rebuild themselves as a title fighting side. Certainly with the work they've done on the transfer market over the last few years, it's going to be longer than that. And the top managers are not really there at the other some of the other sides, to be perfectly honest. I like Pioli at Milan, obviously, but Simone Inzaghi's not completely proven it at Inter, and he's obviously at the minute below Lazio, his former club. So there's a lot going on in Italy at the minute in terms of the possibility to establish yourself as one of the really, really top sides. Like Roma, Mourinho, you would have thought this would be probably a perfect opportunity for him and his way of playing to get them suddenly in the top 2. But they're 8th. They're not doing that well. They don't play that consistently. It's a very, very open league below the top 3, I would say, this season. But Napoli are just flying. The performance levels as much as the results, like you speak about, they'd be one of the ones you play. And that's because how they look in those highlights and how they look when you get shown the goals and all the rest of it is how they play all game long. It really, really is a fantastic way of playing that Spalletti has got them so quickly as well. That's the really impressive thing about it. And they're really well organised, and everybody works very, very hard. It could all implode at a moment's notice. We know that with some of the players in the Napoli squad, previous Spalletti teams. But I think that this is such a big opportunity. They can't possibly pass it up, and they will be very, very focused on that. Whether that means that, like I say, later in the year they more focus on that and not so much on Europe, I'm not sure, because it'll depend, obviously, if they suddenly find themselves 14 points clear or something like that because everybody else drops off. Well, they can afford to focus more on the Champions League, and who they get in their draw will obviously be a big factor in that as well.
Yeah, we mentioned Spalletti there. I mean, you look at the top two managers, and I'm not sure about Pioli as well. I can't remember where he was before Milan, but I know Gasparini's had chances at Inter, didn't he? And Spalletti obviously had chances at Roma and Inter, if I remember correctly. Is Serie A just a league that's kind of almost gone full circle? So I think everyone stereotypically associates it with very defensive football, but you look, it's the two most attacking managers in the league that are top of the league. Is it kind of just taking a little longer for that to maybe adopt more modern football? Because you mentioned Jose there, Roma sat in sixth. They do have a game in hand, to be fair, but I know Simeone and Xandi is not exactly a boring free at the back coach, but even Sarri's quite somewhat attacking compared to it, and I'd probably say Pioli is as well from what I've seen of Milan. But is it like, let's just say, is dinosaurs like Allegri losing their time in Serie A, you reckon?
Maybe. I mean, I think it's fair to say that Serie A was a little bit behind German football, English football, and even Spanish football in terms of being very, very aggressive in transition play and all the rest of it. Not every single side, obviously, but as an overall league. But I think that really just the quality of players there has decreased quite a lot over the last 10, 15 years, probably. They don't really have the spread of really, really elite talent that they did have in the 90s and the early 2000s, certainly. It's just, that's what happens with leagues, isn't it? It's quite cyclical. You're kind of seeing a lot of the same thing now in La Liga as well, outside of Real Madrid and Barcelona, who are rebuilding themselves anyway. There's not the spread of players that there was before. That's probably a Europe-wide thing, but it does go in phases and circles for different leagues at different times, and sometimes it takes a new challenger to sort of build themselves up, and then everyone else realises we should have been a lot better this year. We have to do a lot better starting from now, and they'll go big. They'll attract a new manager. They'll spend a little bit extra. Yeah, exactly that. You're not wrong. It was exactly that in the Premier League. It was such a big opportunity that everybody else realised they passed up, and since then, it's the elite managers have come in. It's it goes full circle, and Premier League football obviously then has the money as well over other leagues, and probably applying it a bit better than they did 15 years ago as well.
Yeah. On the manager then, because obviously Spalletti's just kind of one of them names that was about Serie A for a little while, and I don't think he was pulling up too many trees, but it just seemed to have clicked perfectly at Napoli. I remember Dave saying he doesn't particularly rate him. I mean, what's your thoughts on him?
So to be honest, his first spell at Roma was pretty decent as well. It was really, he only came to my attention at Roma at the beginning because it was basically him who had obviously to oversee Totti not being in the side and that kind of thing. But at Zenit, I watched him a lot. I watched a lot of Russian football and covered the Russian Premier League at that time. It was sort of late 2000s, I think probably around 2007, 8, 9, that sort of timeline when I was covering it. So he did very, very well there. It was always a very, very easily identifiable Spalletti side. And like I say, at Inter, I thought he did quite good work in the first year or so anyway. But he has had a habit during his career of like starting very, very well and then fading out reasonably quickly. And I think that's probably something which you can say about a lot of the coaches in Italy who are on that sort of merry-go-round, and they seem to all manage like Fiorentina and Roma and Inter and Juve for 1 year and all the rest of it, and loads of them seem to overlap. He hadn't really had too many top, let's say, opportunities or jobs other than that Roma and Inter Milan one. So I think going away outside of Italy was probably really good for him in that respect. I'm really surprised that it took 2 years for him after the Inter Milan job to get another one. Maybe he just didn't like the ones that were on offer. But like you say, seems to have come in now to this Napoli side at a very, very opportune moment for the team's regeneration, for himself to be able to build a new side really after all those established faces left, and it's just really worked well. And I think it does go to show sometimes that teams, when they do stay together for quite a long time and they've got really good players, that's fine and they do well, but it can be a little bit limiting as well if you keep relying on the same faces, if you keep looking to what were your best players 3 years ago to still be your best players. Maybe actually sometimes replacing them is the better bet. It doesn't always work out, obviously, and a lot of other things have to come together for that to be the case, but it's worked for them, and maybe we need to take a hint.
Yes. So we'll switch over to the Liverpool view then, because I think we both expect Napoli to change a bit, especially with the top of the table clash at the weekend. But I'll quote something from Klopp's press conference here, which is basically going on now. This is on Neil Jones's Twitter, if you want to read it yourself without my stupid voice. If you watch football, you will know that Napoli are in incredible shape, maybe the informed team in Europe at the moment. So this is not a game for massive rotation. We want to win the game. Yeah, so you can't, when we did the general vote of the game, Karl, you mentioned we'll probably go stronger than anybody expected, and he's basically just said that there, but I was fully coming in here saying let's start Basetic and all the crack, but that seems like it won't happen now, but I still kind of want it to, because I don't want to see our midfield. I mean, that's how it's going, but let's get into Liverpool. What can we do?
Kelleher in goal.
Yeah.
Phillips centre-back with Adrian. Basetic and Mrozek and Liam Hughes in midfield. Sign back Titi Camara and Sander Westerveld to play up front and rest everybody else for the weekend.
David James left back. Let's get
it. Definitely.
Absolutely.
What can we do?
Yeah.
that's probably the question, isn't it? In terms of people who could come in to rotate, I mean, you look at our bench, obviously, in the last match, and gives you the biggest clue, I suppose. Jones, Henderson and Milner. I mean, would we be that surprised to see the three of them come in? Milner hasn't started in midfield since, I think, the Napoli game, where we had absolutely hammered, but earlier on in the season, obviously, he was playing a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if all three of them start, to be perfectly honest. I don't actually know if Klopp addressed anything about not bringing on other subs against Leeds. I don't know if he was asked about that after the match, because obviously mine just got switched off in a fury and then everything ignored for the rest of the weekend, to be perfectly honest. So whether there was anything on Oxlade-Chamberlain or Carvalho not being called upon or anything like that,
I didn't hear anything. No. Unless anyone in the chat heard anything.
Yeah, I mean, Jones is obviously still working his way back, so this is a normal game for him to come back into the lineup. I think, again, nothing at stake beyond the impossible task of winning 4-0, I'd say. It's not going to happen. Let's be pretty clear on that, unless there's an incredible turnaround in organisation, determination, clinical edge from us, and ineptitude from them. I'm not overly hopeful that any of them are going to be on show. So I think it's probably a game you want to bring Kelleher in for, I suppose, because if I assume we're still going to harbour ambitions of trying to do a cup run. You know, it's not the thing that fans are going to want right now, but we do have the cups coming up, and Kelleher is going to play in the League Cup. He's been out injured. He probably doesn't have that much, rhythm or match time. So it seems a sensible one to play him in this, and then again in the cup, get a couple of appearances, get his involvement back in. Maybe that won't be the case, and it'll be Alisson plays as well. But it seems a reasonable one for me.
Would that count as bullying at putting Kelleher in though?
I mean, if I was him, I'd be wanting to play, even if they're just going to have all their starting lineup playing. Get some practice and show what you're capable of.
That's true. Just train like a training session. 50 shots against you, why not? I'm just looking through Neil Jones's Twitter to see if there's anything that jumps out. James Milner did the play a bit, so you're probably assumptions right there that he's ready to play. Ox and Naby obviously can't play. Probably wouldn't anyway. Kanate is seemingly back. It's weird because he obviously came back that one game and then he got injured straight away. do we start him in this game and then maybe sub him off or something like that? Or do we just try and be overly cautious with him? Because, let's be honest, the league fucked. We can just play him whenever and easily and gradually get him back in, but to maybe have him against Napoli, I know we have more subs in both competitions now, but do you really want to play him potentially against Osimhen? Not really.
I mean, it depends, doesn't it, on what his levels are. Obviously, being back on the bench at the weekend suggests he was physically ready to go. So as long as that injury is properly cleared up, I would probably start him. On the one hand, I don't really want to play Gomez against Napoli again, given what happened last time and the fact that he's coming off the back of another mistake, obviously, in the last match.
Oh, God, that's true.
And the other thing is that I assume if Milner starts, it's going to be at right back for Trent.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AEyePro10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Rather than in midfield.
If they play Kvaratskhelia against James Milner, it will be double figures.
Well, again, I guess that's another reason that you want Konate in, because he's got obviously the recovery pace and a bit more ability to barge maybe even Kvaratskhelia off the ball. But I think we also have to note that Milner did all right at right back against Man City, and there are a few more determined people in the squad than him. So maybe just those two things put together, we'll see him have at least a solid match.
Just as angry Yorkshireness will do. Although he was a bit of a train wreck when he came on it right back against Leeds. But it's not his fault. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think that's
just a weird
specific.
Sub. Yeah, that's just an odd sub. No, I can see the logic in playing Konate there, but maybe we do sub him off early or something like that. If the game goes and we just want to protect him.
15.
Oh God, fucking. It's not. I was going to say it's November. It's not even November yet. Fucking Jesus Christ. Oh dearie me. Right, what's around? You mentioned Milner at right back there. I'd probably agree with that. But does that mean Trent on the bench, or are you pushing Trent further forward?
No, if we're not rotating.
The Dave dream.
If we're not rotating heavily, then I'm not going to see Trent in the midfield. Just to rest.
True. Yeah. Left back, obviously, Robbo's kind of been good the last couple of games. He was probably one of the least shit against Leeds, let's put it that way, rather than good.
As one of the few potentially in-form players, I'd probably leave him into this one.
Yeah. And then Simi, who do we play at the week? Who do we play at the weekend?
Us?
Yeah, as a Spurs.
Yeah.
Oh, God. They've been awful recently, so there's a free 3 points for them. Jesus, yeah, Tsimikas can play against them, who cares?
I think one thing to note in terms of Liverpool's lineup for the Napoli game is that because this one's a Tuesday, we don't play Spurs till Sunday, that's a full 5 days.
Oh, God. Go on holiday, lads.
Yeah, so it's a very unusual circumstance for us. It's one extra day does make a bit of a difference in terms of the recovery time and obviously the preparation time. Not that the preparation is making any difference for us at all whatsoever at the minute, but I just mean it's more likely that we'll probably see a few more back-to-back starters.
No, that's a good point. That is a good point, actually. And if they literally want to go on holiday for 4 days, don't do any training, because it seriously doesn't matter, lads. Just bugger off for a few days, it'll do.
Why not?
Yeah, so I think we've got our back four there, unless you want to put Gomez at left centre back and be wild.
Virgil.
No, yeah. What do you make of Virgil? He seems to. I think he was all right against Leeds, but he was just kind of surrounded by shitness. I think he was okay.
Yeah, it wasn't his worst game. It wasn't his best game of the season. That's pretty much all I'd say about him. I think think he's been decent in a few more games recently than poor. But we need players like him to be not just decent. We need him to be leading and pushing everyone else to be better. It's not a coincidence that one of Van Dijk's best games of the season, Man City, other people played well as well. I know it's like they had to in that game, but it also makes a difference to other people.
Yeah, very true. Into midfield then, you mentioned you're surprised we've not stuck with the 4-4-2. I mean, does that mean you want to go back to it, or do you think Klopp will soldier on with this weird diamond thing that clearly doesn't work?
I mean, the diamond, the way we're playing at the minute is not good. I love playing with a diamond, but it has to be in certain situations and with certain types of players, especially on the sides. They make it. Thiago doesn't belong on the side of a diamond. If Thiago's going to be anywhere in a diamond, it's the top or the bottom, and then you've got to have, depending on which role you use him in, it's got to be a very, very specific skill set, either ahead of him or behind him. I don't want to see him on the side of a diamond again. That's not Thiago. If we had to play the diamond for whatever reason, we probably would have been better off playing Firmino on the side, just for the work rate and the industry and all the rest of it, and letting Thiago do bits behind the forwards. But because obviously we do switch to a three in play with a little bit of pressing at times, or a little bit of trying to close out the passing lanes, if not actual pressing, then it kind of has to be Firmino still. So no, I would go back to the 4-4-2, especially if Thiago's going to be in the lineup again. I think Henderson comes back in, and then I'd probably put Jones out on the left.
Elliott right mid?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'd probably agree with that. I think Fabinho he's basically a corpse at this
dismal.
stage.
Absolutely dismal.
Jesus Christ. Like, I know I asked the question at the start, whether it's system or individual. I think it is a bit of both, but fucking hell. Even when people are near him, they just toddle by him. Fucking dreadful.
There obviously is. I think that there must be an injury there, an issue, something that's hampering his mobility. I've said it a few times, and if it's not, it's a big worry. I think, because what is this decline from? It's not just a decline in like technique and like misplacing passes. This is like turning circle. It's awareness. It's tracking. It's loads and loads of things. It's a big concern.
The ability to walk.
Yeah.
Hopefully now that his political career is done, or him and his wife's political career is done with the Brazil election, maybe he can refocus on football. I don't know. Hopefully.
Look, I got to be honest. I would be taking Firmino to the World Cup. Right, is it right now? He's not even the starter anyway.
I was having a discussion with it, and I couldn't think of many Brazilian midfielders, but it's like Fred and Casemiro are the first ones, aren't they? But then you've got Bruno Guimaraes. These are just Premier League ones off the top of my head. Joe Ellington's a lot better than Fabinho at the minute. Douglas Luiz, and he's at a fucking tragic club as well. He's better form than Fabinho. And you'll obviously know more players from the continent than me. But yeah, I just see zero justification.
Yeah, there is this guy who used to get in the Brazil squad. He's not been in, obviously, for a good few months now. His name is Arthur. You might have heard of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's
Where's he
either.
Where's he at nowadays?
He is at the Kirby training facility on the massage benches and so on.
Ah. Yeah. Is that from a day off from his UV days? Yeah, it's not pretty, Brazil's midfield, is it? But maybe with Bruno coming through, it might get better. Yeah, no, he doesn't deserve to go. Absolutely not. And that may do him the world of good for us. Just having 2 months off, because I'm guessing Brazil would get to at least the semi-finals, unless something goes majorly wrong. So it would have been a long campaign, even if he wasn't playing in them games. So yeah, but we know, is it Tite, the manager? He does weird stuff, so maybe the regular lads just get picked. So he might end up going, but he doesn't deserve to. Yeah, I agree with Henderson and Thiago. I don't think that's the ideal midfield, but
nope, it's not.
No, but it's the only option. We can't put Milner in a midfield too. Jones in a midfield too was not it. And yeah, left mid, it's Jones or Carvalho, and Jones is a bit more experienced, isn't it? So yeah, I'd probably agree with that.
Yeah, I think he's playing better anyway. He's had limited involvement, obviously, but I think he started off all right. So, get him more game time, I think.
Yeah, plus we need him in midfield so to get him up to speed. The front two then, because I think Bobby has played quite a lot, so maybe he could do with a rest, even though there is like a long turnover, as you say. But Darwin obviously sprints a lot, so maybe he needs a rest as well. Moore will obviously play because Moore's not allowed to get injured. Who would you play up front with Moore? I'd like to see it with Darwin in a more established two than the weird thing we're seeing at the Min. So yeah, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I would do the same. I'd play Darwin.
Yeah,
probably gonna have to bring one or both of them off anyway. Again, it shouldn't make too much difference. What we want to see is a bit more performance level off the ball. What we want to see is a bit more clinical edge in the final third. You got to keep playing them for that to happen, basically.
No, absolutely. Is there an argument to go back to 4-3-3? Just try and contain it. I mean,
it didn't though.
Obviously,
I mean, if that was a possibility in terms of, we've done it before and it's worked, yeah, sure, of course it would be, but it wasn't containing people. It was an abomination, and the last time we played it and it was an abomination, it was against Napoli. So I don't think at the moment there is an argument for it, especially while we don't have a defensive midfielder. No,
that's very true. That is very true. I don't even know where to go from this. I don't want to go predictions just yet, but in terms of duels in the game, then obviously we're not sure what the Napoli team will be because we expect them to rotate a bit more. But will it be the midfield two against a player like, let's guess, either Ngisa or Ndombele? I think they do somewhat similar stuff, but just in different styles. Is it containing one of them? Because Zielinski will just do neat things on the other side. But containing that more aggressive midfielder, is that the key thing here?
I think so. That's going to be obviously one of them. I think whoever plays on the sides of attack for them are going to be very, very mobile, very obviously trying to cut in field, get down the line to create things for probably Simeone centre forward. So it is really a team who is very, very high on confidence right now. So the speed of play and the speed of movement off the ball is incredible. And that's the biggest thing that we're going to have to deal with in terms of our defence against their attack. We've not been good enough tracking runners. We've not been good enough staying with really basic things like passing someone over or going with them or just doing things that stop people scoring against us. Basically, that's what it comes down to. But then, the line breaker from deep is always the Ngisa or Ndombele on that right-hand side of the three. So stopping them, which is presumably going to be Thiago's side, I can imagine there'll be a yellow card there at some point if that's the case. But it is definitely something that they will look to utilise against us because, like I say, we've been shocking at it so far this year. And if you're any kind of opposition analyst or just pre-game scout for any opponent that Liverpool are playing, that's probably the first thing you're picking out. Runners from deep, over and over again, continually fail to track them, continually fail to stop them either getting shots away or making the overlap or put the through ball or anything at all. We've been rubbish at it this season.
Did you find the yellow card count?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're all fine. The only one for them who is in danger of missing if they get booked is Politano. He plays up front and he's a backup forward anyway, so I doubt they'll be worried about it.
Is anyone in bother for us?
No. We all have only one yellow card apiece. So obviously,
that's because we can't physically tackle people, probably.
Milner has one yellow, which I was quite surprised about because I seem to remember him making about 8 dreadful tackles in Europe this season. But yeah, it's only one yellow.
Milner was never getting booked in a Rangers game. That was just allowed. Although he might have been booked in the Rangers games. No. But I actually can't tackle either. They just give you the ball. And Napoli, we didn't have the ball, so who were we going to tackle? What were we going to do? Yeah, no, that's good to know. That's good to know. We can kind of not piss about with anything like that. God, defensively, I suppose it depends if they play a first choice attack or a second choice attack. I mean, I don't know much about Giovanni Simeone, but I remember Osimhen battering us.
Uh-huh.
Is Simeone? How does Simeone differ to Osimhen in terms of threat? Is he more a 10 or is he a 9?
No, he's a 9, but he's a ground terrier. Let's say he's
right.
He's not going to give
South American.
Yeah, he's I mean, he has aspects of Luis Suarez's game, if you want to put it in terms of a Liverpool or former Liverpool forward. You know, he's someone who will work very, very hard. He's always happy to try and take people on their backs, not off their ankles. He loves getting very, very close inside the box for cutbacks and short range opportunities, that kind of thing. He's a decent build-up player. He can work perfectly fine as a second forward, and he spent a lot of time not playing as a 9 as well, whether it's from the sides or slightly deeper, but he probably will lead the line through the middle, and if you give him a few chances, he's going to score because, one, he's decent, but two, he's also very, very high in confidence. Like I said, even the backups at the minute are scoring goals and playing really well and contributing to where they are, top of the league domestically and in Europe. So this is a side where, even if it is the backups, the threat is still there. The style of play is still there. It's not like watching Liverpool when we rotate 10 people for the League Cup and you can't tell that they actually play for Liverpool. This is a side where people are coming in and still doing the same job. It's very, very good.
Yeah. I'll ask you about Raspadori as well before we go into Kvaratskhelia, because I want to focus on him for a little sec as well. Raspadori's obviously had like a little bit of a streak. I think, especially people in the UK, we've obviously battered. He scored against us. I think he scored against Rangers, but he scored against the England national team as well, which was a really nicely taken goal. Is he? I think Dave and a few others I've heard mention Scamacca as the future of Italian's front line. Going to West Ham is risky, but Raspadori to me seems like a really quality young player as well. Is he more of a... Well, he's probably taken the better career move rather than going to West Ham. It's probably the first argument there, but he looks like a real talent.
Yeah, I like him very, very much. And again, he's another one who can sort of play any role in attack you want, really. He can lead the line, he can play from the left-hand side. I don't think he's quite as good. He can play as a second striker, very, very good there. I like him a lot because he's much more the type of forward that I like compared to Dave. Obviously prefers the people who could play in a
big unit
forwards. Basically, that's what he wants. Yeah. So it's just a different type of attacker, isn't it? They play very, very well as a partnership for the reason that they complement each other, not because they're the same type of player. So I think Raspadori definitely fits a Napoli much more than he would do a West Ham. But then if it was a case of signing for, I don't know, let's say a team who have a lot of pace or deliveries from wide. You've got to remember West Ham were trying to sign people like Kostic in the summer, who's one of the best crossers in Europe. So you want a more aggressive, aerially dominant, powerful sort of front man. So Scamacca was obviously the better choice out of the two for them, whether or not they're interested in Raspadori. But I like him very much. I think he'll do good things, and I think there's a lot more to come from him. Whether he can be one of the very, very elite, we'll see. I'm not sure he's quite that good, but definitely the really good sort of second tier forward. And for them to have him as a not necessarily guaranteed starter is kind of along the same level as us having Jota, for example. Someone who can come in and start as many times as you need him to, but is also, he's got more growth in his game. So if other people are starting ahead of him at certain stages of the season, that's okay, because he's still going to get the work rate and the really good talent when he comes off the bench. He can have an impact in matches, and he's capable of starting, and you don't lose a level of quality, really.
No, yeah, he looks very interesting. Kvaratskhelia then. I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about Ballon d'Or rankings, and they were talking about how he may be up there if he continues this form. Obviously, he's been terrifying in that regard, but for him to get in that conversation when we've seen the resurgence of Messi, Mbappe, Neymar in PSG, but that's PSG, who cares? De Bruyne, Haaland, Real Madrid lads will always be in there. Who knows what Barcelona will do? Is that conversation very much too early? Because I've only seen him a couple of times, and he's just terrifying. But if he does this over a whole season, you physically cannot ignore that person, because he's just terrifying to watch.
Of course, but very, very few players put it together across the course of an entire season. We'll see, obviously, if he does. And if he does, then amazing, because we'll watch it all. Not so amazing, because we have to play against him a couple of times. In terms of actually winning the Ballon d'Or, firstly, they've got to win the league, and secondly, they've probably got to win the Champions League, let's be honest. So
yes, plus he's not doing anything for Georgia.
Yeah. So if they do both of those things, then okay, fine. Even like with Georgia, you mentioned them in Nations League, I think he scored 5 in the 6 group games, which is not bad going, even if it's obviously relative to the level that they're at. I think they're C. I think they're in Group C. Can't really remember now. But anyway, his scoring rate was ridiculous there as well. So definitely keep watching him. Definitely keep seeing how good he can be on a week-to-week basis. And he just looks like such a complete player at the minute already as well. That's the most amazing thing about it. He's settled into the team really, really well. Taken to the league and torn it apart straight away. It's a rare combination, and the consistency so far has been good. But let's see by the time we get to the World Cup and then how he restarts after the break and all the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. I think there has been rumours that Liverpool are looking for another forward, and I'm not saying we'll sign someone like Kvaratskhelia, but if we stick with this 4-4-2, I mean, could we move Diaz to the right and then buy someone in that mould of Kvaratskhelia, or do you think we'll be looking for someone more like a Jota who covers three of the positions and is a bit cheaper?
Honestly, I think I sort of mentioned this about the midfield as well. Before we start talking about who we want to buy, we have to find a defined way of playing. Now, we don't have that at the minute. There's no point in signing any forward or any midfielder really until you know how you're playing, because it's going to have a knock-on effect on not just where Salah plays, for example. Is he now going to be a centre forward all the time or most of the time? Are we going to stick with a two-man attack? Are we going to play one behind, or is it going to be the split strikers and the diamonds? If that's the case, probably don't need another forward, because Diaz then probably plays as a 10 or one of the forwards. He's not going to play on the left side of a diamond, for example. So you need to know how you're going to play positionally more often than not. Obviously not every single game, you don't have to stick to the same, but more often than not. We need to know how we're going to play off the ball, because that's going to impact on the type of forward that we get. If it's going to be a hard-working wide man who's going to have to get back into midfield lines. Kvaratskhelia is playing left side of a 4-3-3, and he's a forward. You can't play all those players all the way across that line. A Diaz who's going to be a forward, a Salah who's a forward, Darwin who's a forward, and Kvaratskhelia who's a forward, and just leave four of them up top all the time. That doesn't work. In the 4-4-2, they have to be
much of PSG.
yeah, and there's a good reason why
in league or no, I'd say, yeah.
So there has to be really, really good balance off the ball as well. And obviously, there's not to say that Kvaratskhelia can't do that, but then you're going to detract from some of the other work that he can do in the final third, obviously. So. Yeah, you can sign who you want, but at the minute I think it's probably good to acknowledge that we don't really have a set, successful way of being off the ball. We don't really have a set and successful way of defending at the minute. We don't really have a set and successful way of attacking game after game at the minute either, because it's still been a bit hit and miss. We've chopped and changed, and injury absences account for a bit of it, but you know what else the results account for? If we're not in the Champions League, where are we going to get the money for these big signings from?
Not from the owners. That's a different podcast, and I will whinge later on at that. Karl, I mean, final thoughts on the game then. I mean, obviously we'll lead into predictions as well, but what do you want to see from this? Because, let's be honest, we're not going to win 4-0 and get top of the table, because that would be mental, and you'd have to ask a lot of questions of Napoli if that happened. But is it just, I was going to say keep the score down, but that's just stupid. Is it just about being competitive in this game, considering the way the last game went against us a lot?
I mean, yeah, competitive. I mean, that should be every single game. It should be. There's no excuse for some of the lack of effort and energy that some of the players have had in some of the games this season. Never. And to be perfectly honest, some of the performances that we've seen this season, I would take whichever players I'm talking about in those games out for the next one, because it's just unacceptable. It shouldn't be there. What do I want to see from this game? Apart from that, organisation, an ability to defend in proper groups and pairings and partnerships, preferably Kanate being very, very good and fit and able to come back into the team and be very, very fit and good on a long-term basis. I'm not really looking for too much beyond that, to be honest. The build-up play I don't think is going to change too much. And like you said, the result, I mean, even if we win, the likelihood of it being by an enormous scoreline is minuscule. So I'm not really looking for topping the group here. I'm looking for something to take into the Spurs match. I'm looking for something that shows that we're learning some lessons and we realise that what we've been doing is not working and is not acceptable. Because like you mentioned before, Tottenham have been really poor recently, playing very, very poorly. Did again at the weekend. but they're ahead of us in the league and they're getting results when they need them. And even if we go into that game and we're not in the greatest form, we should be confident about our opportunities to get a result there based on a couple of different things. One, the fact that they have a massive game in midweek, like huge. They have their group is the wide open one in midweek. They have obviously one
the Europa League group.
Yeah, they have one fewer day obviously to prepare and recover and all the rest of it as well. And like I say, they have not sorted out everything in their own team yet, bouncing between 3 midfields and 3 up front and a few injuries to deal with and all the rest of it. So there's a game to be won there, and you would like to think that at least this time it's a big game, the players should be up for it, blah, 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 like they were against Man City. And then we can worry about sorting out the Nottingham Forest and Leeds performances after that. It's just got to be one game at a time, and I think for this one, you just want to see the basic things that we can take into the next game. The organisation, the willingness to work hard, the defensive solidity, the cutting out stupid mistakes, and energy, basically.
Yeah. Nigel just asked a question, and just before we go, I won't ignore him, but we mentioned the midfield. He's asking about Bajcetic. We mentioned rotation there. We said, and Klopp said in his press, he's not going to start, but getting him decent amount of minutes, because he came on against Ajax and looked fine.
Yeah, I would. I would
see him 30 minutes or so.
I would start him, to be honest, because like you said, the game's done. I would be playing him and Adrian in midfield. I don't care. Just not to completely swipe away the game, obviously, because we do have to utilise it at least to try and get back to some level of ability. But yes, I would play Bajcetic. He can't have been worse than the players in training. He can't have been worse in training than the players have been in the matches. So as long as he is, showing that he presumably looks like he's ready to play senior football and that, why not use this as an opportunity? I presume he'll start against Derby, but maybe, I don't know where Keita is exactly in his recovery, but maybe Keita will be ready for some minutes against Derby. If so, that's one centre midfield spot or some minutes which are gone, which he might not get. Oxlade-Chamberlain obviously will be coming back in and need room domestically to get some minutes. So again, he might not get one of those chances. So maybe this one in Europe, where neither of those two are available, probably at least one of the senior centre mids should be playing or should be allowed to play, or whatever you want to look at it. Then I would absolutely do so. And I wouldn't have a problem if it's him instead of Fabinho and Henderson instead of Thiago for this game or something like that, and see if we are ready to put Thiago and Fabinho back together for Spurs or whatever it is. I would be absolutely fine to see him start and see where he is and see if he warrants a spot in this team. It's not usually my preference to put in a load of untested players in a badly performing team, but if people are not playing well, they also can't just be left in over and over and over and over.
Yeah. Ox isn't registered for the Champions League, Nigel, so that's why we went with Henderson. I'm with you, but just with Klopp in his press conference, he'll probably go strong. But no, I'm with you. Bajcetic, another child, Adrian, that's the diamond. God. Predictions then. What are you going with?
I mean, there's not really too much reason to suggest that we'll win, is there? That's the big problem here. If we're predicting based on actually what's happened recently, I'd probably 2-1 to Napoli, 3-1 to Napoli. We could rouse ourselves. We have players who are good. We shouldn't ignore that in the face of all this crapness that we're having to deal with. These players are capable of picking themselves up and beating both Napoli and Tottenham. Are they going to? There's not really any reason to suggest that'll be the case, so I'll go 2-1 Napoli.
Yeah, I'm thinking something similar. And I just noticed by being on the UEFA stats page that Salah has joint top goals in the competition, and Jota has top assists as well.
Jota has 4 assists in the Champions League from 2 starts.
Oh, God. Thank you, Rangers. Yeah. Thank you, Rangers. Jesus. Yeah, I won't say anything positive because then Napoli will just ruin my life. But no, it is good to see Salah's actually got numbers when we've allowed him to play football. But yeah, no, I'd probably say something similar, like a 2-1 win for Napoli. Maybe sneak a draw if both teams have. If it's a dead game at half time. Maybe we just have a nice kickabout for the last half and just chill. But yeah, I probably think the same. Anything to plug before we go then, Karl?
I have a piece on the Indie which will be out Tuesday morning, which is all the groups' permutations and which groups to watch out for and which ones to completely ignore over the next 2 nights. I don't think too much else before the match.
Just check out that Spurs group, seeing as that's the only one that's left. Absolutely. I presume Dave will be back for the Spurs game, because I'm sure you're sick of hearing me by now with all that jazz. But hopefully Dave's back. I don't think he's doing two-footed in that today, so if you're listening to that as well, he should hopefully be back Tuesday. If he's not, I will do a Daily Red tomorrow and just look at the game and Klopp's presser a bit more detailed. But for everyone listening live in Discord, thank you. And for everyone listening later on, a big thank you as well to you. But hopefully, good result against Napoli, and then on to Spurs. Thank you everyone for listening. Goodbye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.